But what I'm saying this morning is that the attack on the family is an attack on life itself, and God connects mothers with life. We have 3 points to make this morning. That the position of mother is a position of peace, it's a position of power, and it's a position of protection. First of all, though, let's go to Genesis chapter 3 and see what we first see about the position of mother. Genesis chapter 3. Now, we've had the position of mother mentioned earlier, because in Genesis 2 it says, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother, shall cleave to his wife, the two shall be one." But in terms of the position, or if we can say it this way, the function of being a mother, we have the first statement of the function of being a mother in Genesis chapter 3, verse 20, and this is the first time the function is actually mentioned. Look at this. "And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living." Do you see how in one verse Moses there connects motherhood with life? My friends, our societal attack on motherhood and children is an attack on life itself. I don't know how they expect to do this. I don't know how they expect to keep the society going and attack motherhood at the same time. How do you do that? You might as well ban tires at the next Indianapolis 500. Yeah, we're going to have a race, but nobody can have tires. Moses does this. In fact, one of the commentators I read was very adamant on this point, because he said, and the other commentators said the same thing, but he was really adamant. He said that Adam called his wife's name Eve. He said that name means life, and that is the case. He said what it should say is, and Adam called his wife's name life, because she's the mother of all living. This was a big deal here. We kind of read this and keep going, right? But we got to see this in light of what just happened. And God had said to them, "In the day you eat the fruit, you shall surely die." Up until this point, it was all about death, pretty much. They're going to get thrown out of the garden. They hadn't gotten thrown out yet, but they just got cursed. The ground got cursed for Adam's sake. He's going to have to work really hard and sweat in order to live. That wasn't too encouraging thing to hear. We just heard from Eve that now, in the giving of life, it's going to be very painful for her to do that. Everything's been difficult to this point. But now we have a very positive statement. Adam called his wife's name, I think that the commentator is correct, he called his wife's name life. She is actual life. Well, how does this work for us today? Well, we know that without mothers, there's no life. But if we don't believe in life, then we don't have a future. The attack on the family is twofold, and it goes like this. If you choose to be a mother, you are a fool, and if you try to be a father, you're a bigger fool. That is our societal picture today. What I'm going to try to demonstrate today from a phrase, a mother in Israel, is that if you give up the position of mother, you give up peace, you give up power to some degree in some ways, and you give up protection. Those three will leave as you attack the position of mother. That's our point. So, we have 3 points this morning from 2 Samuel 20 and Judges chapter 5. We'll start in 2 Samuel 20. What I want you to see in both of these passages is that these women, in these cases, demonstrated those three things. They just demonstrated peacefulness, they demonstrated power, and they demonstrated protection. Let's first go to 2 Samuel chapter 20. This is the passage wherein David has almost lost his kingdom. He's almost lost it to his son Absalom. There was a big battle away from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is unprotected at this point. The whole thing apparently happened so fast that the enemies of Israel did not have a chance to come in and exploit the weakness. Generally speaking, when you have a civil war, there is the possibility of a definite attack from outside. You see this all the time. It didn't happen in the United States. The United States during our so-called Civil War, war between the states, was too far away from any of our traditional enemies at the time to be attacked. But certainly during the civil hang-ups during the French Revolution, that did definitely invite outside attacks, mainly from England, and it was Napoleon who took charge there and saved France as a nation. If it wouldn't have been for Napoleon, I don't know if there'd be a France today. So during this time, David is being chased out of Jerusalem by his own son. There's a big battle. His own son is killed. David has come back to Jerusalem, but when he gets back, there's a fight between the tribe of Judah, and Benjamin, if you will, and the other 10 tribes. And they get into a fight over the status of David. And the last verse in chapter 19, it says, "And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 shares in the king, therefore we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel." And so there's this big, David comes back, and it should have been a very positive time for everyone, but it was not. Because he comes back, and what had been happening in his own family, all kinds of wars and battles in his own family. You remember one of his daughters got raped by one of his sons. What a mess. And then one of his other sons, Absalom, killed the one that had done that to the sister. And there's all kinds of division and problems in the family. And now these problems have gone from his family to his nation. So he comes back, he's now king again. The Absalom problem has been dealt with, and now the tribes are fighting with each other. It's just getting larger. So, what happens next is a young man. It says, "And there happened to be there a rebel whose name was Sheba the son of Bichri, a Benjamite. He blows a trumpet and says, We have no share in David, nor do we have an inheritance of the son of Jesse, every man to his own tents." So, get the picture here. Things are not good in Denmark, shall we say. The king comes back to what he hopes is a united country, and the first thing that happens is some kind of a leader guy blows a trumpet and says, "We don't want this guy for a king. Wait a minute, we just had a battle, and we just fought with Absalom. Now we're coming home." And sure enough, here's a guy saying, an influential guy saying, "We don't even have a king anymore." Do you get the horrific picture that's going on here? If you're living in this time in Israel and you don't know the rest of the story, you're like, what in the world is going on? Do we have a nation? Do we have a king? I thought we had a king, David. Okay, he left, but now he's back. And now that he's back, everybody else is saying, let's get out of Dodge. Everybody go home. We don't have a nation anymore. Well, to make matters worse, if you will, David appoints a member of the tribe of Benjamin to go take care of this guy, because this guy was from the tribe of Benjamin, Sheba here. And the Bible tells us this very, very specifically, and the reason is because Saul, the previous king, there were probably still some folks who were loyal to Saul still, even though he hadn't been king for a while. It says he's a Benjamite. So if anybody was going to lead the rebellion, it would have been someone from the tribe of Benjamin, from which the previous king had come. That's how these things often work. Well, Joab, the king appoints a guy named Amasa. Joab, who had always been very loyal to David, but also very treacherous, quite frankly, in that loyalty, finds a way to kill David's appointed ambassador, if you will, to solve this problem. Wow. As one commentator, Matthew Henry, well, Joab now is going to go deal with Sheba. And Matthew Henry mentions this. He said, wow. He said that Joab, the murderer, is now going to solve the problem of Sheba, the traitor. Things are bad. The murderer is going to solve the traitor. Wow. Things are not good. How is this going to be fixed? Well, let's see what happens here. He went through all the tribes of Israel, verse 14, to Abel and Beth-maachah and all the Beerites. So they were gathered together and also went after Sheba. So what's happened is Joab has killed Amasa. He's gathered the army together, and they're going to solve this Sheba guy, this blow the trumpet guy, who's rejecting David as king. This traitorous rebel guy. And so he's got this army now looking for Sheba. This is what's happening in your formerly peaceful country. It's a mess. And they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth-maachah, and they cast up a siege mound against the city, and it stood by the rampart, and all the people who were with Joash battered the wall to throw it down. So, Sheba has come to a town near you. It's called Abel. Joab, and by the way, if you know anything about Joab's one of those few generals in the Bible that never lost a battle. Joab was a guy not to be messed with in a fight. He never lost a battle, not one time. Well, he's coming. And you have city walls. No problem for Joab. He's piling up dirt against the walls. He is coming. It's inevitable. He is coming just like a train coming down the track. You know what I mean? You see a train coming down the track, you're in the middle of the track. Guess what? It is coming to where you're standing if you're standing in the track. It may look like it's not moving, but it will. It's got no place else to go. It's coming to you. And that's Joab here. Joab is going to throw down the entire city in just a few more verses in the Bible. What do? Well, verse 16. Then a wise woman cried out from the city, "Hear, hear. Please say to Joab, 'Come nearby, that I may speak with you.' When he had come near to her, the woman said, 'Are you Joab?' He answered, 'I am.' Then she said to him, 'Hear the words of your maidservant.' And he answered, 'I am listening.' So she spoke, saying, 'They used to talk in former times, saying, They shall surely seek guidance at Abel, and so they would end disputes. I am among the peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord?' Joab answered and said, Far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. That is not so. But a man from the mountains of Ephraim, Sheba the son of Bichri by name, has raised his hand against the king, against David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city.' So the woman said to Joab, 'Watch, his head will be thrown to you over the wall.' Then the woman in her wisdom went to all the people, and they came out of the head, and they cut off the head of Sheba the son of Bichri, and they threw it out to Joab. Then he blew a trumpet, and they withdrew from the city, every man to his tent. So Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem." Okay. She is identified. This is what I want you to see. She is identified as a wise woman. Verse 16, then a wise woman cried out from the city, "Hear, hear, please say to Joab," and so forth. I'm going to get an audience with Joab. She is identified by the Bible as a wise woman. But how does she identify herself to Joab? What is it that is going to pique Joab's interest for Joab to see that he's making a big fat mistake by destroying the city? How is she going to identify herself? Well, we see how she identifies herself. She says, I am among the peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. That is what she identifies herself as. Now again, she says she's among the peaceable. So in other words, she's identifying her people that she's living with. She did that in the beginning by pointing out to Joab, look, Joab, in the old days, they used to come here to settle disputes. You are about to destroy the city where they would come to settle disputes. I'm sure Joab might have thought about that a little bit in terms of his public relations campaign that he had to pick up and get going since he just murdered Amasa. So that would have gotten his interest. But the intriguing thing to me in this is that she identifies herself not as a wise woman, not as a smart person, not as a city council woman, or any of that. She identifies herself as a mother in Israel. And says to Joab, you seek to destroy a mother in Israel over this. I've not seen another case where Joab, a man of purpose, a man of tremendous loyalty, all of that. I've not seen another case where he just totally changes his mind and he goes opposite. You might remember just one chapter before, King David had told Joab specifically to leave Absalom alone. He told him, leave him alone. Joab doesn't listen to David at all. Joab personally kills Absalom in the previous chapter. In this chapter, here's Joab changing his mind because of the testimony or the appeal of a mother in Israel. See what she did here. In verse 19, you seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? Whatever else you want to say about Joab, he was serious about the inheritance of the Lord. And this wise woman connected a mother with the inheritance of the Lord, which is exactly what we just saw in Malachi chapter 2, right? God seeks an inheritance. He seeks godly offspring. This is very important to him. And this woman connects the two. And my friends, one of the lessons we get from this today is that if we continue to attack motherhood, we do attack the inheritance of the Lord. No question about it. This phrase, a mother in Israel, shows up again. It only shows up twice in the Bible. And we'll get to it there in a minute, but can you see that this mother in Israel, she did those three things. She exercised a position of peace. She brought peace. Joab was going to beat up the whole city. He wasn't going to stop until he got that Sheba guy. A position of power. No one else. Apparently there was no one else that could stop what Joab was about to do except this woman, apparently. And a position of protection. She protected not only her own family there, she protected the entire city. I hope you see those three items there: a position of peace, a position of power, and a position of protection. Now, Judges chapter 5, we see the same phrase. Judges chapter 5. Once again, things are not good. Things are real bad, actually. Beginning of Judges chapter 5, we see kind of how bad. And then we'll get a description a little bit later from Deborah. Actually, we'll start in chapter 4. When Ehud was dead, remember Ehud? He was that left-handed guy that knew how to use a dagger. We'll leave it at that. He was that left-handed guy that knew how to use a dagger against fat people. Okay, we'll leave it at that. All right. Really, really heavy people. All right. You can read that later in chapter 3. It's pretty dramatic story. Well, Ehud grows old, he dies. The children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who dwelt in a name I really can't even pronounce when I'm reading it silently, so we'll leave that one alone. The children of Israel then cry out to the Lord, for Jabin had 900 chariots of iron, and for 20 years he had harshly oppressed the children of Israel. 20 years. So if you were born during this time and you were less than 20 years old, you would have known nothing except for the oppression of this guy Jabin and his special assistant there, who was able to carry out his wishes, Sisera. Is there a problem in Israel? And it gets to Jabin's ears, the king's ears. Where's Sisera? Sisera, go drag out your chariots and solve that problem. Now Deborah, now here's the thing, verse 4. A prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. Now, what happens next, we don't really have time to read all and explain it all, but Deborah is identified here as a prophetess. I want you to see that. She goes and she says to Barak, she says, God has delivered this guy Sisera into your hands. Go solve Sisera. And Barak says, I won't go unless you go. And Deborah says, all right, I'll go, but understand this victory is ultimately going to be talked about by a woman, not by you. And Barak, he strikes me as being a kind of a practical man. He basically says, look, I'm not too worried about who gets the credit. Let's just go out and solve this guy Sisera, okay? He doesn't say it quite like that. But I mean, he doesn't really respond to Deborah's admonition there. So what happens, you'll remember, is that they go out, they fight, and poor Sisera is getting beat so badly by the children of Israel that he has to get out of his chariot and run on his own. Now, that's pretty bad. Now, think about that. Things are really bad when you're getting chased that badly because apparently the horses, think about it, are so tired they can't even run anymore. I don't know much about horses, but I understand the horses kind of don't get tired. They just kind of run until they die. So I don't know if his horses were dead or what, but they were no longer functioning. They were that tired. This is a bad day in the battlefield for poor Sisera. So Sisera has to get up and run himself. His chariots, in which he trusted, or his chariot, is not able to protect him. And you may recall that a very gutsy and courageous woman invites him in. I mean, this is guts right here. Jael, her name was, Jael, that's her name. She invites Sisera and says, you'll be safe in here. And he comes into her tent. He is shot to pieces. He has no strength left. He immediately falls sound asleep. She gets herself a tent peg. Why does Hollywood miss all the good stories? You want to talk about courage. Oh, man. I mean, wouldn't you be thinking, hey, the guy might wake up and see me right here like this? It's not going to go well for me. But with great courage and great skill, she takes a tent peg and drills it through poor Sisera's temple and nails him to the ground. And so thus Deborah's prophecy is somewhat fulfilled there, that the credit for the victory is going to go to a woman. Now, this phrase, a mother in Israel, I want you to see how it shows up again. Deborah and Barak, verse 5, they sang that day, saying, when leaders lead in Israel and the people willingly offer themselves, bless the Lord. Hear, O kings, give ear, O princes, even I will sing to the Lord, I will sing praise to the Lord God of Israel. Lord, when you went out from Seir, you marched from the field of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens poured, the clouds also poured water, the mountains gushed before the Lord, this Sinai before the Lord God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, he was one of the previous judges, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, there's Jael showing up, the highways were deserted, and the travelers walked along the byways. Village life ceased. It ceased in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, and this is how she identifies herself, a mother in Israel. Once again, we had the Bible itself designated her as a prophetess, but that's not how she identifies herself here. She doesn't say, I was a prophetess, and I'm the guy that got Barak out there, and I'm the one that pretty much gave him the prophecy. And if it wouldn't have been for me going along with Barak, we'd still be in this big problem. No. She gives credit to God, no question about it, but then she identifies herself as a mother in Israel. And she says this, and this is how we get an idea of how bad it was. We need to spend time sometimes on these songs. They show up, like the Song of Hannah, for example, in 1 Samuel. These songs sort of describe for us how things were. This is how things were. Verse 6, as we saw it. The highways were deserted, there in the last part of the verse. The travelers walked along the byways. Okay, things were bad. You couldn't walk along the highway. If you're going to do business, you couldn't walk along the highway. Maybe one of Jabin's guys or Sisera's guys would come along and shake you down for money. Maybe kill you. Who knows? So if you're going to travel anywhere, you had to find a back road where his guys weren't. This is where things were pretty violent. Now watch this. They chose new gods. Talking about Israel here. Then there was war in the gates. There was war in the gates. You know, it's always nice to have a war. When you're going to have a war, try to make sure it's on a foreign field someplace. War in the gates is a different animal. You're going to be very personally involved. There's war in the gates. Not a shield or spear was seen among the 40,000 of Israel. Once again, we see by an oppressive government, which was the government of Jabin, we see gun control, weapons control here again. This shows up again and again. It'll show up later in the book of Samuel. Not a shield or spear was seen among the 40,000 in Israel. You Israelites, you take care of the farming, we'll take care of the defense. I'm not going to let you defend yourselves. My heart is with the rulers of Israel who offer themselves willingly with the people. Bless the Lord. Speak, you who ride on white donkeys, who sit in judges' attire, and who walk along the road, far from the noise of the archers among the watering places. There they shall recount the righteous acts of the Lord, the righteous acts for his villagers in Israel. Then the people of the Lord shall go down to the gates. Now, do you see what's happening here? They had to walk along the byways, and they could not talk publicly. After the defeat of Jabin, they could do all these things. So it was a mother in Israel. Again, a person who describes herself as a mother in Israel. That's her description of herself. Now, we see her as many other things. Very wise, a prophetess, courageous, all these things. She identifies herself as a mother in Israel. My friends, there's a lot more things we could say about this. But as we wrap this up, how important is this idea of a mother in Israel? Or a mother in Pennsylvania? Or a mother in Lancaster or Berks or Lehigh or whatever county? How important that is that to us really? I think we see two examples here. This phrase, a mother in Israel, and I think connected with both, is peacefulness, power, and protection in each case. Is it any wonder, my friends, that as we've given up on the idea of mothering, that we've given up peace? I mean, honestly, do you think, is our nation in any more peace than they were like 25 years ago? I don't know how many proxy wars we've got going on. I've lost track. I don't even know. Somebody's dealing drugs over there, Leah. Let's go bomb them. And how about your own personal peace? Do you feel as safe when you walk around in places now as you did 25 years ago? I doubt it. How about our own power, if you will? No, not that we're in it for power, but how often do we complain that these special interest groups that are so small have all the power and we have none? And protection. How are you doing for protection? How are things working out? Do you feel more and more like your neighbor could report you for some crazy thing, or somebody could see you doing something and you're going to get a phone call or a visit to your house? I read a case this week of a young man. He lives in California, so he's not really from here. That's like another country, for sure. But the neighbors called him because he was grilling. Called the fire department. He was out there grilling. The fire department gets in like, what in the world is this? I mean, do you feel like you're less protected? It seems like we have a greater state apparatus, and the state is there supposed to be to protect us. And do you feel a little bit like the greater the state apparatus grows, the less protection you have, quite frankly? Is it connected with our attack on mothers? I believe it is. What are you and I doing to encourage mothers and future generations? Without them, We will lose the peace, we'll lose the protection, we'll lose the influence and the power, if you will. Without mothers, you lose all three. Now, it's one thing to have a sermon about Mother's Day in the present. What about mothers in the future? What are we doing to encourage this great profession in the future? Without it, we have no future. None. Let's pray. Help us, O Lord, to always take your institution seriously. May we learn from these courageous women, this wise woman whose name we don't know there that spoke to Joab, and Deborah and Jael, that we must encourage mothering and motherhood at every turn. If we don't, it will end in disaster for us as we see it in front of our own eyes. We pray it in Christ's name. Amen.